hit a nerve. To say or do something that causes a strong emotional reaction in someone. Used when a topic, comment, or action unintentionally triggers feelings such as anger, sadness, or discomfort. It often happens when something is sensitive or personally meaningful to someone. I think I hit a nerve when I mentioned his past experience. The story about unfair treatment at work hit a nerve with many employees. Take the edge off. To reduce the strength, intensity, or discomfort of something unpleasant. Used when something makes a difficult feeling, situation, or sensation less sharp or less overwhelming. It can refer to stress, pain, nervousness, or even emotional tension, making things easier to tolerate. A short walk helped take the edge off my stress after a long day. He had a light snack to take the edge off his hunger before dinner. Go off the rails. To stop working normally and become chaotic or out of control. Used when a situation, plan, or conversation suddenly loses structure and becomes disorganized or extreme. It often describes something that was progressing normally but then breaks down. The conversation went off the rails after the misunderstanding started. Everything went off the rails when no one agreed on the next step. In over your head. To be involved in something that is too difficult to handle comfortably. Used when someone realizes that a situation is more complex or demanding than they expected. It often implies feeling overwhelmed or underprepared for what is happening. He was in over his head when the situation became more complicated than he thought. I quickly realized I was in over my head and needed help to manage everything. Take the plunge. To finally decide to do something important or risky after hesitation. Used when someone commits to a decision they were previously unsure about. It often describes a moment of courage or final decision after thinking for a long time. He finally took the plunge and moved to a new place. She decided to take the plunge and start something new. Dip a toe in. To try something new or unfamiliar in a careful, slow way before fully committing to it. Used when someone wants to test a new experience, activity, or hobby without rushing. It comes from the idea of putting your toe into water to check the temperature before jumping in. This expression is perfect for situations where you feel a little nervous or uncertain, so you choose to take just a small first step to see if you like it. I was afraid of heights, so I decided to dip a toe in by trying the easiest indoor climbing wall first. She wants to learn how to cook, so she is dipping a toe in by making simple pasta dishes at home. Put the cart before the horse. To do things in the wrong order, causing confusion or inefficiency. Used when someone starts a process without completing necessary earlier steps. It often highlights poor planning or rushing ahead without proper preparation. You're putting the cart before the horse by making decisions before understanding the problem. We shouldn't design the solution before we fully understand the issue. That would be putting the cart before the horse. Call the shots. To be the person who makes decisions and controls a situation. Used when someone has authority or influence over what happens in a group or situation. It often implies leadership or control over important decisions. She calls the shots in that group, so everyone follows her decisions. He likes to call the shots and decide how things should be done. Go back to the drawing board. To start again from the beginning after a plan has failed. Used when something does not work as expected and must be redesigned or rethought completely. It often describes restarting a process with new ideas after failure. The idea didn't work, so we had to go back to the drawing board and rethink everything. After the mistake, they went back to the drawing board to create a better approach. Keep someone in check. To control or limit someone's behavior so they do not become too extreme or uncontrolled. Used when someone or something prevents another person from acting too freely, aggressively, or irresponsibly. It often describes balance and control in behavior or actions. Rules help keep everyone in check so things don't get out of control. His friends help keep him in check when he starts acting too impulsively. Know the ropes. To understand how something works through experience or familiarity. Used when someone has learned the practical details of a system, place, or process and can handle it confidently. It often describes skill gained over time through practice rather than theory. She knows the ropes now after working there for a long time. It takes a while to know the ropes, but once you do, everything becomes easier. Keep a lid on it. To control emotions, information, or a situation so it does not spread or become worse. Used when someone tries to prevent something from becoming public, emotional, or chaotic. It can refer to keeping secrets, staying calm, or managing a situation carefully. Try to keep a lid on it for now until we understand the situation better. He kept a lid on his frustration even though he was clearly upset. Out of hand. To become difficult or impossible to control. Used when a situation starts to grow too big, too chaotic, or too intense to manage properly. It often describes problems that escalate quickly without control. The situation got out of hand when everyone started arguing at once. We need to stop this before it gets out of hand. Bite off more than you can chew. To take on a task or responsibility that is too big to manage. Used when someone tries to handle more work or responsibility than they realistically can. It often leads to stress, mistakes, or difficulty completing everything properly. He bit off more than he could chew when he agreed to handle everything alone. I think I bit off more than I can chew with this project because it's much bigger than I expected. Give someone the cold shoulder. To deliberately ignore or treat someone in an unfriendly way. Used when someone shows rejection or dislike by avoiding communication or acting distant. It often happens after disagreement or conflict. She gave him the cold shoulder after the argument and didn't speak to him. They started giving me the cold shoulder without explaining why. Break the bank. To cost a lot of money, often more than someone can afford. Used when something is expensive, but sometimes still considered worth it depending on the situation. It often describes costs that feel significant or heavy financially. This phone won't break the bank, so it's still affordable for most people. We found a nice place to stay that didn't break the bank but still felt comfortable. Let the cat out of the bag. To accidentally reveal a secret that was supposed to stay hidden. Used when someone unintentionally shares private or hidden information. It often happens in casual conversation when someone is not careful with what they say. He let the cat out of the bag about the surprise without realizing it. She accidentally let the cat out of the bag during the conversation. Sit tight. To wait calmly without taking action yet. Used when someone is told to stay patient because things are still developing or decisions are not ready. It often implies that action will come later, but not immediately. Just sit tight for now, and we will let you know when things are ready. We were told to sit tight until further instructions came. Up in the air. To be uncertain and not decided yet. Used when plans, decisions, or outcomes are still unclear. It often describes situations where nothing has been finalized and everything is still changing. The plan is still up in the air, so nothing is confirmed yet. Everything is up in the air at the moment, and we are waiting for a decision. On the same page. To have the same understanding or agreement about something. Used when people clearly understand each other and share the same idea or plan. It often helps avoid confusion and ensures cooperation in communication. Let's make sure we are on the same page before we continue. We are finally on the same page, so everything is clear now. Pull strings. To use influence or connections to secretly help achieve something. Used when someone uses personal power, contacts, or authority to make something happen, often indirectly. It can suggest behind-the-scenes help or advantage. He pulled strings to get things approved faster than usual. She managed to pull strings and helped him get access. Go downhill. To gradually become worse over time. Used when a situation, condition, or performance slowly deteriorates. It often describes negative change that happens step by step rather than suddenly. Things started to go downhill after that decision was made. His health went downhill over the next few months. Lose your touch. To lose the ability or skill you once had. Used when someone becomes less effective or less skilled at something they used to do well. It often implies a decline in natural ability or experience over time. He hasn't lost his touch, he still solves problems quickly. She feels like she's losing her touch after not practicing for a while. Put your foot in it. To accidentally say or do something embarrassing or inappropriate. Used when someone makes a social mistake by saying something awkward or unintentionally offensive. It often happens in conversation without bad intention. I really put my foot in it when I mentioned the wrong name. She put her foot in it by asking a sensitive question without knowing the background. Go out on a limb. To take a risk by supporting something uncertain or unpopular. Used when someone expresses an opinion or supports an idea even though it may not be widely accepted. It often involves courage and risk of criticism. I'll go out on a limb and say this idea might actually work. She went out on a limb to defend him even when others disagreed.